our President Trump, they wanted to change. When you look at a map, shows all of the counties that voted for President Trump, those that voted for Hillary Clinton, you see that our friends across the aisle, part of a party that's really become a fringe party, has the fringes of the country. But the massive interior, most of it except for some big cities here and there, it's people that want to preserve and protect the most blessed place to raise a family that there's ever been. Sure, Solomon's Israel was apparently an amazing place, but the people didn't have our freedoms.
CIA, I spoke to Jim Comey, I spoke to Mike Rogers to make sure that they were able to send over their experts so that they could share information among them, even the most sensitive information that was not disseminated within the community. I wanted to make sure that, learning the lessons of 9/11, that there were not going to be any stovepipes and barriers to sharing information from the intelligence and law enforcement communities.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Too much time expired. Mr. Gowdy, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for your service to our country. Let's go back to where we were a couple of minutes ago. You mentioned, or you testified that you had a conversation in August of 2016 with your Russian counterpart. You testified that you briefed at least 8 members of Congress throughout the pendency of your investigation when you learned of Russian efforts. And we'll get to that in a minute, because my understanding from your unclassed report is Russia has historically attempted to interfere with our electoral process, and they did so without coordination, collusion, or conspiring with any of the candidates. So they have a history of doing it. We'll lay that aside for a minute. 2016 electoral process. When you learned of Russian efforts, did you have evidence of a connection between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors?
As I said, Mr. Gowdy, I don't do evidence. And we were uncovering information and intelligence about interactions and contacts between U.S. persons and the Russians. And as we came upon that, we would share it with the Bureau.
I appreciate that you don't do evidence, Director Brennan. Unfortunately, that's what I do. That's the word we use. You use the word assessment. You use the word tradecraft. I use the word evidence. And the good news for me is lots of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle use the word evidence too. One of my colleagues said there is more than circumstantial evidence of collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign. Now, there are only 2 types of evidence. There's circumstantial and direct. So if it's more than circumstantial, by necessity, it has to be direct. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of one of my colleagues on the other side of this very committee. Another Democrat colleague on the other side of this committee also used the word evidence, that he has seen evidence.